Joined by Eric Stetson and Scott Santens, and we're aboard the USS Hornet at the Block to the Future convention here on April 6th, 2018. This is the mess hall, corporal mess hall as a matter of fact, and we're talking about universal basic income. Gentlemen, you guys obviously have a wealth of experience dealing with this topic, and it's something that's very close to my heart as someone who grew up in relative poverty. So I'd like to just dive right in. You moderated a panel on this. You work with Manna.
Correct.
And
founder of Manna.
You're the founder of Manna. Tell us a little bit about what Manna does and where you see the future of universal basic income manifesting.
Okay, so Manna is the world's first universal basic income cryptocurrency that actually is a tradable token on public exchanges. So it has a value determined by the free market. Mm-hmm. We have a nonprofit organization called the People's Currency Foundation, which is a registered 501c3 that also helps to back the value of the currency on the market with donations that we receive, tax-deductible donations. Mm-hmm. So it's the value of the token is a combination of people just choosing to buy it because they support the project, and also our charity helping to provide value into that token. We've so far distributed over $500,000 worth of Manna to universal basic income recipients around the world. We have over 35,000 people that are signed up that have received the UBI so far. And we have over 80,000 people on our web-based platform, which is mannabase.com, which we are in the early stages of turning that into a social media platform where people will not only be able to receive the Manna and send it to other users and to other wallets, either internally or externally, which you can already do on Mannabase, but what the next phase will be to give more utility to the currency. Mm-hmm. For people to be able to use it on the platform for targeted direct giving. You'll be able to have a giving portfolio where you can automatically give a certain amount of Manna that you're receiving as UBI. If you don't need the UBI yourself, if you're a well-off person, right, you can automatically redistribute that to your own giving portfolio that you create.
And you can curate that based on your preferences.
Right, exactly. So like if, let's say you wanted to give 10% to children in Puerto Rico, and you wanted to give 15% to your favorite charity that is on the platform, you want to give, let's say, 25% to a group of, let's say, 10 different musicians, independent musicians or artists that are using the platform, you'll be able to do that, whatever proportions and ratios that you want, and whatever either targeted groups of people or charitable organizations or individual people that you want to include in your giving portfolio, you'll be able to personally choose that and set that. So it's essentially like we're building a blockchain-based version of Patreon. Is kind of I would say an easy way to describe it. We're also going to be ultimately including a blogging aspect as well. So you'll be able to blog on the platform similar to what you can do with Steemit. Okay. And you'll be able to give the Manna to bloggers that you like their content that they're creating.
Are you considering relative to that, Steemit has a cryptocurrency with it? Are you thinking about enabling people to use the platform where they're creating content for Manna to allow other types of cryptocurrencies as well? Or?
We haven't thought about that really. We built the platform specifically for Manna, and I mean, for the foreseeable future, it'll probably just be for using the Manna token only. But we certainly wouldn't rule out the possibility that if other tokens that are socially conscious kind of cryptocurrencies wanted to be included in our platform, I think we'd be open to explore that possibility.
Can people donate any cryptocurrency, like to the 501c3?
Yeah, we have had people do that, and yeah, people can in fact donate in any kind of currency. But of course, if you're not a United States resident, then you're not going to get the 501c3 tax deduction. But you can donate any currency to us.
One of the things that you brought up when you were speaking that I'd love to talk a little bit more about. By the way, Scott is the moderator of our universal basic income. Right?
Yeah, the basic income subreddit.
Yes, so if you guys want to get involved with him, feel free to check that out on Reddit. But one of the things that I think that was very interesting that I was really unaware of was the brain development in children who are affected by poverty, and how bringing universal basic income to households where there are children involved has actually had a vastly beneficial effect on their development. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to dive in to this particular area. I think it's quite an important area too, just the transformative potential of changing the lives of children who grow up into adults.
Right.
And I mean, there's a study that shows that a dollar that spent on preventing a kid living in poverty actually saves $3 to $9 down the line. It just shows you how expensive it is to even just accept child poverty as a thing. Like it's very expensive. And so what I covered in the talk was just this data looking at actual cortical surface area, which shows that really, if you're raised in a household that's anywhere like above $50,000, like it doesn't really make any difference to your cortical surface area. But suddenly at around that point, it starts actually affecting it. And then when you get into poverty, if your household is earning around $12,000 or so, then it starts becoming an exponential function, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. And worse by me is decreased cortical surface area development. So this is, I mean, essentially we're causing brain damage in kids who are were raised in poverty. It's like they're born and then they don't even get like a full, they don't have opportunity. They're not getting a fair shot at life. They're just like starting off with like an anchor tied to their foot for like the rest of their life. And so we know that that's a problem. At the same time, there's been really interesting research. I mentioned this. One of the studies I mentioned in the talk was this what happened with the Great Smoky Mountain Study of Youth, which was this study. It was meant to be a 10-year longitudinal study where they were studying kids in poverty in North Carolina. A few years into this experiment, a portion of that group started receiving dividends through the Cherokee Casino there. Fairly large dividends. We're talking like $4,000 per year. So this actually had a real impact that they found. It just happened to create this new experimental group that they could like look at this and compare. Like you couldn't really design an experiment like that.
Right.
It's unethical really to design an experiment like that. But it just happened to form, and then they were able to study it after the fact. And so they found that this had an effect on the parents where it decreased stress in the household, to the point where there was decreased alcohol use as well. And it essentially allowed the parents to be better parents. It created a better environment. The kids did better in school. And they actually found personality differences as well, that kids became more agreeable and conscientious, which means that they worked better with other kids, and that their honesty was more important, and like structure, and these personality traits that actually are seen as positive and actually are found to be positive economically later in life. Like you do better later in life if you have these traits.
And how long did it take for those traits to manifest?
So you saw that there was a larger effect. So let's say you're a kid in a household, let's say you're 2 years old. So
right.
You were just born recently. Your kid and your parents start receiving this income. So you're raised in this environment for a much longer amount of time. And they found that was what the larger effect was. And if you're older and you start receiving it, then you still have an effect, but it's not as big as it is starting earlier.
Because of the formative years.
Yeah, and also the income difference too. So let's say if you were in a household who was earning, like really poor, versus a household who was closer to the poverty line, and they found that income that they received that lifted them had a larger effect on those who were poorest. So you see this largest effect happening on those who are poorest and those who are youngest.
Now, this kind of goes back to the Manna, the work that Manna is doing, because you guys are helping to, put money in the hands of individuals that are suffering from this situation. What's the criteria that you use to disperse that income, and which municipalities are you working with? I understand you are working with some municipalities.
We're starting to talk with municipalities.
Yes.
We haven't made any deals yet.
Let me clarify that then.
Right. It's definitely important to us that we do find municipalities that want to work with us. The reason being because a lot of municipalities, they already know who in their jurisdiction are the people below the poverty line. They can they have systems in place, for helping people, and we could easily kind of tie in with those existing programs. I mean, for example, right here in San Francisco, we had a meeting just the other day with somebody who works for the city government, and they were talking about this program that they have with 30,000 children who are receiving a savings account automatically, just because they're children below the poverty line here in San Francisco. And we were talking about the possibility of, well, could we also provide a Manna savings account where they would get automatically the basic capital grants, which is part of the Manna program, that children are going to be eligible for it as well, so that they can build up a savings account in Manna, and then when they turn 18, they will be able to access that wallet. It'll be locked, until they turn 18. So, to get back to your original question, what kind of criteria are we using and so forth, we don't actually specify that the person has to be a person in need. Like, we don't have a income level or anything like that.
It wouldn't be universal if you did.
Correct, exactly. It is literally a fully universal basic income.
Refreshing.
Yeah, and the closest parallel of something that already exists, and which is a very successful program, is the Alaska Permanent Fund, where every citizen in the state of Alaska receives a couple $1,000s a year, which is it's a sharing of the profits from Alaska's natural resources, like their oil reserves and stuff like that. And they distribute those profits directly to every person in Alaska. Well, what we want to do ultimately with Manna is not only back the value with a charity, which we're already doing, but we also want to be backing the value with an asset fund, part of which would actually be ownership of the Manna-based social media platform. I mean, imagine if, for example, Facebook, instead of funneling all the profits, up to Mark Zuckerberg, we're, funneling the profits to every Facebook user. Well, that's kind of something that we're going to be able to do with Manna-based, because this is, a big part of the capitalization of the currency is actually going to be through, distributing those profits from the social media platform back into the currency, and so then everybody's going to, receive some of that as the UBI.
Interesting you bring that up. It's a hot button issue. The metrics that are gathered by user data are valuable to advertisers, and there is no question that on social media platforms like Facebook, others, we see the information being sold, and we don't see the owners of that information, because if you look at the terms of service, when you publish something, you own it. Right? Yeah. We don't see the owners of that information necessarily being taken into account.
Now, just to quickly follow up with one more point about means testing and all that, and working with municipalities, the reason I think that we do want to do some of that, working with organizations to that have already identified people in need, whether that be governments or charities, is because we want to enable the people using the Manna-based platform to choose to donate to those pools of people. We don't want to just limit our UBI, because then it wouldn't be a UBI, right? Universal. So we don't want to limit the UBI, only to people in need, but we want to get a robust set of options for people on the platform to be able to voluntarily choose that if they want their UBI to be redistributed, that instead of, like, for example, so let's say I'm an average upper middle class American, let's say, and I don't need a UBI. I'm like, I'd rather have this going to poor kids in San Francisco, or I'd rather have this go to people in a village in Africa that really that are living on like $2 a day or something. Right. You'll be able to do that based on the fact that Manna-based will be partnering with all of these different charities and municipalities. So we're starting to pursue those kind of relationships. We haven't yet actually closed any deals, but we're in talks with a number of different charities and a couple of different municipalities so far.
Well, I'd love to talk to you again in the future as you guys get closer to brokering some of those agreements and are ready to start announcing them. Definitely, we should speak. I'd love to be able to present a platform so that you can tell the world about what you guys are doing. Is there anything at all either one of you gentlemen would like to add?
Yeah, I just want to jump in too and look at this like universal versus targeting argument and this idea of need, because I think it really gets into basic income itself and also the Manna as a function. So this idea of like, right now we feel that the only people who say deserve assistance, deserve income in some way or benefits in kind, are those that somebody else determines as being in need.
Right.
And then what happens is that if you're no longer in need, then they pull back those benefits. So the effect of that is that you're effectively punishing people for earning an income, which is usually what determines the benefit level, because then you're no longer in need. In which case, it's like you're taxing people.
It
like
disincentivizes them from wanting to opt out of the.
If you're earning, say, $15,000 in benefits, let's say, and you're offered a $12,000 job, let's say it's a part-time job, and if you accept that job,
you lose
the benefits. Then why would you do that?
No, we will.
Unless you love the job and you're willing to take a $3,000 hit, then you would. But most people are going to look at that and go, that's not a good deal.
Some of you may remember, if you follow Scott on Twitter, a poll that he had a few weeks ago, which I think displayed that exact propensity among people who had the choice. Like if you could choose, I think the questions in the poll were if you could choose between $15,000 and $10,000. Which one would you choose? And it was like, well, obviously, 99% of the people chose 15,000.
Right.
And I think like a couple of people thought it was a trick question and chose.
Yeah. And so the thing about this too is that so right now we have this setup where we have a centralized authority who is determining need based on some metric for need. And so the thing is, I mean, there's a lot of people in need who they themselves feel are in need. That's actually where a lot of the stigma comes from. Because if you're on the other side of this line that's been drawn, and you're like barely getting by, you have a very stressful life, you're working in poverty, you hate your job, and then you see someone else on the other side of that line who's actually lifted up above you, and they're getting assistance and you're not, then that's going to lead to some viewpoints that I would say are negative. I mean, it really helps with racism. It's like a lot of part of this was this, the welfare queen kind of myth that came out.
Yeah.
It was really kind of part of that. You'd say, that's wrong, that this woman was able to get so much in benefits, and here I am, working my ass off and getting nothing. And so that's what it really it like perpetuates this myth, and it perpetuates the division, it creates that stigma. And so by having a fully universal amount of currency that goes out to everybody, you aren't drawing that line anymore. And also, because everyone's lifted up, then nobody is punished for working, because every amount that you accept is actually leading to you being better off. And that's what I think a really important component people to understand, is that this idea of basic income is nothing like welfare. It's not targeted benefits at all. And the strength of it comes from the fact that you aren't determining need. And that you were just saying everybody should start with this and then build from there. Yeah. And so a side effect of this with Manna, I think, is so interesting, and just this idea of a UBI cryptocurrency in general, is that it allows like this decentralized targeting where you're effectively letting everyone decide for themselves if they're in need. So if you receive Manna and you need to use it, let's say so you'll sell it on exchange for, say, US dollars, and then you use that to help pay your rent or something. But if you don't need it, then you don't sell it, and you just keep it. And you might be keeping it because you'll get to use it down the line. Maybe you'll decide that you'll give it to someone else who you feel is in need. But then again, it's like you are determining who may be in need, and then it's up to them to decide if they are in need actually to either keep it or sell the Manna.
Or pay it forward to the next person.
Yeah, or to pay it forward. So it's this really interesting decentralized determination of need based on everyone deciding for themselves if they're in need, instead of letting some other authority decide who's in need and who isn't.
Yeah, if I could just pick up on that for a second.
Of course.
That,
yes,
let's say that, a person is not in need by the traditional definition of like that, oh, I'm about to starve, if somebody doesn't give me, $5 in the next hour or whatever. But let's say that you need something to achieve a goal that is incredibly important for you in your life. Like, let's say, for example, I want to get a higher degree so that I can, my goal in life is to become a nuclear physicist, and I can't do that unless I have enough money to be able to pursue a PhD. Well, are you in need or are you not in need? Well, the great thing about as Scott was saying, letting individuals decide that is that the whole question of what need is, what being needy is very relative. And do we really want to have a society where we say that there's some kind of uniform, rigid kind of standard of need that only means that basically, oh, well, you're not going to starve, but if you're not starving, then you're not in need. I don't think that's really the best possible definition for need, because society would miss out on the benefits of so many people being able to create amazing things in their life, whether it's great art or scientific discoveries or technological innovations or whatever it is, that they can only do that if they receive enough funding, if they don't come from a wealthy background, and they need to get access to money to be able to pursue their dreams in life that can add tremendous value to society.
Yeah, I just want to jump on that too. Just it really is interesting to focus on how we define need and what it means. So I mentioned in my talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because I think it's a really good way of seeing what UBI is about and the effectiveness of it.
I think the top of that, by the way, is coffee.
No, I think that might be actually the most basic part. You gotta have coffee first, or do everything else.
I revere coffee, and yet I am also coming from a foundation of coffee, so for me it's like a sandwich.
It sounds as coffee all the way down, like turtles all the way
down.
You never get to the bottom. Right.
But yeah, so it's turtles. See, Maslow's hierarchy of needs was about saying that everyone has to have their most basic needs met first. Like, you have to eat, you have to have like warmth, you have to have shelter. Like, these are your basic needs, and unless those needs are met, you can't move on to the other needs. And the other needs are also needs. Like, you need to be part of community, and you need friendships, and you need love, and you need, say, the pursuit of meaning in your life. You need self-actualization. Is actually at the top alongside coffee. There's this idea that we all want to be our best selves, like that, and that's a need. And so, like we're saying there too, is like if somebody needs to, say, pursue physics or something instead of just eating bread, like that's still a need. And like, you need to hang out with friends, you need community. And so, someone can say that okay, I've got my basics met, but also I need to use some of it to, say, spend some time with friends, because that's really important. It's a need. And that's what UBI enables, is that you're actually able to meet more of these needs. And if you need the basic stuff, if you get that covered, you're going to keep going, because everyone wants to reach that top. You want to be your best self.
And I think there's sort of an elephant in the room right now of automation. And I think that there's this ticking time bomb with that too. Types of technology where we're capable of delivering more and more automation to the factory setting, to basically almost every aspect of our lives. And we're seeing it now with automated vehicles. We're seeing it now with, like, we've got shuttles that we can fly into space and land on platforms without having anybody involved on the shuttle. We have drones that we can control and fire missiles at targets on the ground from in our warfare. And we have this artificial intelligence, which is now being able to use edge processing on the edges of networks so that it can process hundreds and thousands of times faster and reach relative echelons of productivity before which we're not capable of doing. What's going to happen when literally the jobs aren't there? This is the type of foundation, the conversations that we're having now are going to shape that future.
If we don't have a universal basic income of some form, I believe there's going to be massive social upheaval in the next few decades. It'll be within the lifetimes of most people alive today. If we think terrorism is a bad problem now, if we think that there's a refugee crisis now, we ain't seen nothing yet. Compared to if we don't have a UBI.
I think the important element of this too is just like, I think it's kind of mind-boggling to me that you kind of pull back and think of this as like you're a Martian and you're not from Earth, and you're looking at Earth and you're seeing the fact that they're developing all of this technology that's able to do more and more and more, and the result of that is actually that people have to work harder and harder and harder, that their wages are lower and lower, that they're worse off, that people's lives are actually not improving. It's the opposite. They're getting worse. They're getting more stressed out. It doesn't make any sense because we have a system where all the benefits are accruing to just a few people, and everyone else is becoming worse off. Like here we are, and then we're afraid. We're afraid of losing our jobs, which is like this construct that says that we have to work for someone else, usually like an owner of land, in order to prove our right to exist. Fiefdom. And we accept that. That's like normal. And so we have to do that in order to earn an income, which is getting smaller and smaller despite productivity growing larger and larger and larger. It's just so backwards. Like here we're afraid, like the Oxford report mentioned that, concluded that in 20 years that we're looking at a potential of a loss of 47% of existing employment. And so it's like this fear. We're afraid that we're going to lose half our jobs, but we could be looking at it in another way, saying that we could all work half as much and be just as employed as we are now. It's just a matter of spreading the benefits of this productivity improvements and saying that this construct of a 40-hour work week, it's not handed down on stone tablets from God himself. This is something that is like a temporary thing that lasted long enough that now we think it's like normal and is just accepted that way. But we can actually have, say, it could be normal to work 20 hours a week. And if you had a basic income that was lifting you up, then you could actually, pursue work that necessarily doesn't provide a whole lot of income, but you're still not living in poverty, but you're doing something you really care for. Or you're doing a job because you can refuse to do that job has to pay you more. So you could be even earning more doing these jobs that machines can't do yet. And then also you would be incentivizing the automation of those jobs, because if human labor is actually more expensive than a machine, then people are going to make those investments in machines to eliminate those jobs. So we could change this so that automation is a powerful net good, so that we're able to pursue the work that's most important to us, that we're able to have more of our time and control our own choices, and just be empowered and share in this growing productivity. Or we could keep doing what we're doing now, which is just essentially handing all of this benefits and resources to those at the top, who then get to control our decisions and buy our government and everything that results from that.
Well, Eric, if our viewers want to get involved, tell them how they can get signed up on your site.
So just go to mannabase.com, which is MANNABASE.com, and you can start the sign-up process. To go through the whole process, takes about 10 minutes. You do have to verify that you're a unique human being with a cell phone, and there's some algorithms on the back end that also try to filter out fraud. But for most people, you'll be able to get approved instantaneously, and then you'll be receiving on a weekly basis the Manna UBI, which as of right now, people are just getting like 50 cents or something per week. It's not worth a whole lot, but this is because project is in its infancy. And speaking of that, I want to say that one thing about blockchain is that we don't have to wait for politicians and for the vast majority of the public, to elect a government that creates the kind of social innovations that we want to see. We can create the kind of economy that we want right now. So if you agree that universal basic income is necessary, and that this is something that we want to have in society, we can do this ourselves through the blockchain. We can support projects like Manna, sign up on Mannabase, and be part of the solution. And I think, the power is in our hands. It's just like when the printing press was invented. That was the first time in human history that anybody could put their ideas out there. You could print up pamphlets and promote your ideas, and it led to this incredible flowering of democracy and the scientific revolution. Well, today we have that power with blockchain technology. We can create the kind of economy that we want through blockchain technology by supporting the currencies, the cryptocurrencies that are doing good in the world, that fit with your values. And I believe that Manna is one that if enough people support it, it will truly change the world for the better. So I hope you will get involved.
There you have it. Well, thank you for joining me today. It's been a distinct pleasure to speak with you, make your acquaintance, and I look forward to our talks in the future.
Yeah, thanks. Did I just add one thing to
Of course. Of course.
Okay, so yeah, I would just welcome all the viewers to just ask themselves, what is it that you're not doing right now because you aren't starting each month with enough money to live? Like, what is it that you could be doing? And maybe you're lucky enough to be doing something that you already love to do. But if you had a basic income, what would you do? And I think if you just think about that, then you can really think about how different the world could be.
Food for thought.